Hello, hey everyone, and welcome to my review of the Styrian Grand Prix. Well, the rain never came, and it wasn't exactly a classic we were treated to at the Styrian Grand Prix, but a top three of Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and Valtteri Bottas. Not the first time those three have been on podium altogether, but yeah, another weekend where Max Verstappen reigns supreme. So that's four wins on the trot now for Red Bull. So three of them for Verstappen and one for Sergio Perez. And really, fantastic lap from Max in qualifying. And then really, once the race got underway, he got off to a great start. And then really, he never looked back. He looked in total control. Mercedes didn't really have the pace to challenge Max the weekend that's just gone. So yeah, Max from start to finish, fantastic performance from the Dutchman, and yeah, he extends his lead in the Drivers' Championship over Lewis Hamilton to 18 points. But it only takes one Grand Prix, for example, for Lewis to win and Max to retire, and then Lewis regains the lead in the Drivers' Championship. So still all to play for, and yeah, fantastic win for Max Verstappen. Wasn't a weekend of without a mistake for Red Bull. I know that Red Bull are without doubt one of the quickest, if not the quickest, pit crew teams in paddock. So there was a slow stop that Checo had on race day, which meant that as a result of that, Valtteri was able to inherit third place. But after Checo made his second stop, he definitely he was catching Valtteri at vast rates or not, and yeah, I think he was at about 0.5, 0.6 of a second behind Bottas when they crossed the line for the final time. So one more lap or even a couple more laps, and I think Checo would have got him for sure. But no, really good drive from Checo actually. Another solid drive and good points for Red Bull, and yeah, obviously a fantastic homecoming for the team, and then obviously they'll get the opportunity again to potentially rack up another win at their home Grand Prix. So this coming weekend for the Austrian Grand Prix. But yeah, like I say, cracking weekend for Max Verstappen, and he's doing all he has to do, at this stage, keep winning the races, and yeah, and again, he's got a good solid teammate in Checo Perez who's bringing home the points for Red Bull in the fight for the constructors as well. So really good weekend for Red Bull. Just that small blip, as I mentioned, with Checo's first stop, but other than that, another faultless weekend for Red Bull, and no doubt what Red Bull are doing right now. There's going to be one or two head scratching at Mercedes, asking, where have Red Bull found this pace? And yeah, I think Mercedes, if they won a battle, then they've definitely got one this year. And I think Lewis, in a way, although he's trailing in a drivers' championship, I'm sure he's relishing the challenge, and this is the challenge that he wants, because we're having two fantastic teams going head to head, two great drivers in at the moment in terms of drivers' championship. You'd think it's going to be between Max and Lewis. Yeah, going head to head. So yeah, it's a fantastic battle. It's a great battle for Formula One as well. And I think Mercedes, as I say, they're going to be asking one or two questions. Look, finishing second and third, it's not a bad result, and obviously it's not perfect, but it's compared to the previous results they've had in recent Grand Prix, it's definitely better. So whilst Mercedes weren't able to challenge Red Bull at the Styrian Grand Prix, didn't have the pace to do so. For sure, finishing second and third is not a bad result for Mercedes, and they would have closed the gap a little bit. I believe they've closed the gap. I might be wrong. In the constructors. So, but yeah, no, Mercedes are they're still in there. Whilst obviously they'll be frustrated, not the fact that now it's 4 races without a win for them. It's not like them, particularly within the hybrid area where they've been really dominant. But yeah, Mercedes, if they didn't know how to test, they've definitely got a test now. But there's an awfully long way to go this season, and it's not about how you start the season; it's where you end up. At the end of the season, and that's what counts. So, Mercedes, I'm sure will be playing the long game, but at the same time, they'll be wanting to get back to winning ways as soon as they can. But yeah, I think the battle between Lewis and Max is fantastic for Formula One, and whilst Lewis wasn't able to, didn't have the pace to challenge Max. Still, the fact that he was able to come home in second, still pick up that second place, and strong results, can is still good. So, yeah, yeah, obviously not the race win, but a good set of points, a solid points for Mercedes at the Styrian Grand Prix, and Valtteri Bottas as well. Good to see him back on the podium. It's been a while for him since he was last on the podium. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that can give him some confidence going into the rest of the season. And he needed that result because we're seeing Checo doing a fantastic job in supporting Max, and Valtteri needs to do exactly the same for Lewis. And look, obviously, as I've mentioned before, about the fact that obviously there's going to be speculation about Valtteri's situation at Mercedes, but if he can continue to, if he can put a string of podium finishes together, get back to winning ways, and really have a clean weekend. Obviously, we saw him have that spin in free practice, which meant that he had a free place drop for the race. If I'm being honest, I did feel as if it was a bit harsh. I've seen hard. No, I've seen penalties given for much worse. So yeah, I did feel that I was a bit harsh at the time. But look, it is what it is, and perhaps you could no to be fair, I could understand why the penalty was given. I could understand the circumstances, the reasons. But the free place penalty drop itself, I did feel that was a bit harsh. But it is what it is, and Valtteri, even though he had that, still finished on the podium. So not a bad weekend for Valtteri, and as I say, hopefully he can build on that going into the rest of the season. So another top five finish for Lando Norris and McLaren, and Lando, he really is so far this season. He's one of the standout, if not one of the stars of the season, and he got off to a good start, but on Sunday, but keeping Bottas and also Perez behind was always going to be tough. So in a way, that wasn't the battle that Lando needs to get involved with. His battle was more or less with trying to keep the Ferraris um, behind him, and he was able to do that. So yeah, really, really another solid weekend, and also obviously he put in a great lap in qualifying as well. There's something about Austria, isn't there? Something about Austria and Lando, where Lando always seems to go well. Obviously, he scored his first ever podium in Formula One last year in Austria. And obviously they're back in Austria this weekend. So another opportunity for Lando to challenge perhaps for a podium finish. But yeah, another stonking drive from Lando to finish in the top five. And whilst Daniel Ricciardo had a great weekend in France, it was like he was take one step forward and then two steps back, and he felt like that on at the weekend at the Styrian Grand Prix. Disappointing qualifying session because in free practice he looked great, and then for some reason it just didn't quite click for him in qualifying. And then on race day, he actually got off to a very good start, and he was running in the top 10 during the early part of the race. And then I think he had a power issue, which meant that he dropped back. And then really after that, he wasn't able to recover, which was a real shame. But at the same time, look, things like that, the fact that your power, the power unit, had issues with that. That is out of his control. So, from the fact that Daniel had a good start, on race day, and he can take a lot of heart from that. And as I mentioned with the power, um, issue, unit issue, look, there's nothing that he could do, and that is out of his control. So, look, Daniel. The great thing about the, the situation now is the fact that we've got another Grand Prix in Austria, and it's an opportunity for Daniel to bounce back. So yeah, I think Daniel, there'll be some, I guess, envy in terms of what Lando's trying to, or what Lando's achieved so far this season. But at the same time, when he looks at the way Lando's performing, he'll know that there's pace in that McLaren, and they can be right up there. On any given day, they can be challenging the Mercedes and the Red Bull. So, Daniel, I don't think it's important for him to not get too disheartened. Whilst the results in most recent Grand Prix, or this season, might not have been great. There'll be one or two good points that Daniel's been able to shine in. So he just needs to focus on those positives, and just get back to being the Daniel that we know he can be. And really, really, really want to see Daniel bounce back and have a really good career at McLaren. And speaking of McLaren, in the battle for third in the constructors, I wouldn't say it was necessarily a great weekend for Ferrari, but it was a good weekend. So Carlos Sainz finishing sixth, so really good performance from the Spaniards. I was able to make his strategy work. So qualified outside the top 10, but able to make that. Obviously getting free choice tyres, was able to make that strategy work, and really good job from Carlos. And he was actually closing in on Lando Norris towards the end of the race, but just didn't quite have the pace to do so. But even so, good weekend for Carlos Sainz, and then Charles Leclerc, who was voted driver of the day by Formula One fans. Not a bad race for Charles, although you could argue it could have been better. We saw him have that first lap incident with Pierre Gasly of AlphaTauri. Now that's not the first time we've seen Charles have space awareness issues. I know that he had a similar collision with his then teammate Sebastian Vettel last year in Austria. Charles just needs to try and cut that out. But and without that, he actually could have been a lot closer to challenging Lando for fifth on the race. But even so, the fact that Charles was able to more or less make his way over the field from the back of the grid, having had to make that early pit stop. But and then end up finishing in the top 10. So really good drive from Charles, and really good points for Ferrari. So they had to claw some points back on McLaren. And I think that battle for third in the constructors is going to be an intriguing one, and definitely one to keep an eye out for the rest of the season. More good points for Aston Martin and Lance Stroll, and Lance is just continuing to do a solid job at Aston Martin, and really good job from Lance. And as I mentioned in the preview about winning over the skeptics, I think he's continuing to do that. So fair play to Lance, and a really good drive from the Canadian. Fernando Alonso finishing ninth, so a really good drive from Fernando. Obviously, I know he said on Team Radio he enjoyed qualifying on Saturday, and on race day, he looked fairly competitive, and Fernando seems to be adapting more to the Alpine car, seems to get more comfortable with the car, and recent results suggest that he is. So he's on a points run now. I know he scored points in Azerbaijan, and obviously he scored points in France as well. But then he's also scored points at Styria Grand Prix as well. So so Fernando's starting to get more comfortable with the Alpine car, and I think his confidence is growing. As for Esteban Ocon, another race where he finishes outside the points. And ever since he signed that contract, things haven't gone quite as smoothly for Esteban. But I've got no doubts that he will bounce back. And as I said with Daniel Ricciardo, another weekend in Austria, another opportunity for Esteban to bounce back. So yeah, and then the final point scorer is Yuki Tsunoda. So really good point for the young Japanese driver, and he needed that. I think he's had a fair few disappointing races this year, but we've also seen flashes of brilliance from Tsunoda as well, and seen what he is capable of. So just needs to try and put a consistent run of good performances together. And if he can do that, then no doubt he will have a stronger, a stronger second half, but also mid part of the season as well. So Kimi Raikkonen finished just outside the points in 11th. So the third time I believe he's finished outside the points. So no doubt frustrating for Alfa Romeo, but on a positive side, making his way from more or less the back of the field to finishing 11th shows that Alfa Romeo has definitely got a good race pace, and also shows that if, for example, there are um, incidents further up the field, then Kimi and also Antonio Giovinazzi, they'll be able to benefit from that. So there's a lot of positives that Alfa Romeo can take, even though they didn't score points in Styria. I still feel that they're showing signs of progress, and I do feel that there are more points for them to score this season. And yeah, not a bad race at all for Kimi Raikkonen. And the one driver I must say, who I did feel sorry for is George Russell Williams. He had a really good weekend, George. Only 8 thousandths of a second for making it into Q3 on Saturday. No doubt that would have been gut wrenching. And during the race, up until his first pit stop, George, you know what? He looked the part. Where he was, and they were there on merit. They deserved to be where they are, and George was driving a great race, and he was more or less all over the rear of Fernando Alonso, the Alpine, before he came in for his stops. But unfortunately, I know they had an issue with the power unit. I think they also mentioned about having hydraulics issues as well. So a real shame for George, and no doubt gut wrenching. But at the same time, there's a lot of positives that Williams can take. You look at the fact that George was able to finish 12th in France. That was on merit. The fact that they were able to more or less run in the top 10 up until George had to pit. Again, running comfortably in the top 10. So Williams are definitely making strides. They're definitely making improvements, and if they carry on, performing the way that they are and making the improvements that they're continuing to make, they will score points, and the points will come as soon as really soon for George and for Williams as well. So yeah, obviously disappointing end result for Williams, but when I look back at the weekend, actually there are a lot of positives that he and the team can take from the weekend in Styria. So that's the end of my review of the Styrian Grand Prix. My preview for the Austrian Grand Prix will be filmed later on this week, so keep an eye on that. And in the meantime, if you want to talk things Formula One, you can do so by messaging me on Twitter at Baggies20, and I'm also on Instagram, Manish Patel89. Have a great week, all of you, and I will catch up with you when I do my preview of the Austrian Grand Prix. Take care, everyone.